Have yourself a merry little Christmas in Connecticut. Lucas and Zack podcast. From now on, your troubles will be words about Christmas. Okay.
It was good. Yeah.
Thank you.
Was the looking up at the sky like just hopefully praying that you could remember the words to the song?
Yeah, I didn't realize I didn't know the words until I got there.
This is actually
did I blow my load too early? Because now we can never do a Meet Me in St. Louis episode because I already ruined the song.
Yeah, we can do it. We'll be fine. I've long-standing take I've had is that 99% of people think they know Christmas songs and don't. Like if you actually tested the majority of Americans on like the words or even just the relative tune of a Christmas song, I think people would fail miserably, but everyone would be really confident in their abilities going into it. Because it's one of those things
with all music.
But Christmas music especially, we hear in such a passive light. It's every Christmas, it's sort of just like in the background, it's in the store, it's on the radio. Like we hear it in so many different ways, but I don't think we ever like truly engage with it. So I think there's a lot of people that just like they think you know it really well. It's like major movie franchises that everybody thinks they know really well, and then you ask them 10 questions that are deeper than who plays Luke Skywalker, and suddenly they start flailing around.
Yeah,
that's my take.
I mean, so I feel like you're just picking on my level of intelligence, which can't go deeper in anything. When I sing songs, I just make sounds that approximate to what they're saying.
This is why. This is why you're a great father, because you and Theo are on roughly the same level when it comes to songs. You sort of have the tune and then like three of the word, and you just kind of repeat.
We're really good at laws. Me and him can both law really well. He oohs a little better than me, but I'm working on my oohs.
How are you yodeling? Do you have good yodeling?
Yeah.
I feel like I want to see you and Theo do like do a yodeling soundtrack together.
Really solid. Yeah, I don't think he has that much technique yet. We'll work on it.
All right. Welcome, folks, to the Lucas and Zack podcast discussing Christmas music and people's abilities to sing it. It's the final episode of the wonderful Barbara Stanwyck month, and we are talking the main film, Christmas in Connecticut. Typically, we would start with Last Letterboxd Movie, and we are going to start with it, but with a slight twist. Rather than presenting two separate films, we did a little bit of a mini segment covering, we wanted to talk about Remember the Night, which is the other Barbara Stanwyck film that we had originally planned to cover until realizing that at the time of recording, it was basically impossible to acquire anywhere online, legally or otherwise. And
don't gotta let the otherwise out of the bag. Just say that's legally.
No, I'm just saying in the context of like this is one of these movies that like legitimately the only way to get it was to go on to Amazon and buy a DVD version of it and have it sent to you, and then that the timing didn't work out. But they added it to the Criterion channel, and so we both watched it. And Zach, tell us what you thought of Remember the Night.
Yeah, Remember the Night, real chill. It's just like a relaxing movie. I mean, it's still there's a lot of similarities to Christmas Connecticut if it is like took some sleeping pills and calmed it down and slowed it down a little bit. It's still a comedy, but I've never seen her in more just this relaxed position. A lot of the setup, she still is essentially a criminal. She stole. There's still this kind of goofy screwball plot, but the screwball energy is just taken out of it in a way that I found really, calming. Like a nice warm fire around the Christmas, and it makes puts the romance fully in the center and a little more fleshed out, and I think real for as much as a romance that develops in like 3 days time can be. For a classic movie, I found it really charming. And I know we talked about Fred McMurray last episode, and I kind of hinted at my thoughts on him in this, who I think he is just spectacular in this movie, because I do think he's the best at going again toe-to-toe with Stanwick and all the movies we have watched. Someone that can share the same energy, he's kind of playing the nobleman in this, but someone that has the intelligence that can match with Stanwick, that I think really works in this.
Yeah, it's one of the few movies I think that we talked about where legitimately McMurray might be better in the film than Stanwyck is. It's like it's the only one you can even make that argument. If you watch the other ones, there is no argument that Stanwyck is not the best part of Lady Eve, and definitely not for Ball of Fire or Chanteau or Christmas in Connecticut, or even Double Indemnity.
Double Indemnity has variety of characters.
Yeah, but this is interesting. It's sort of in the same vein of Double Indemnity, which she also does with Fred McMurray, except she's a little bit less villainous. No. He doesn't get she's a little more sympathetic, but also like not necessarily a great person. She does sort of try to steal, and it's never clearly. We're never given an indication. We're never given an indication that she's stealing because of a need. Versus like just kind of wanting stuff. There does seem to be a little bit of like
a need. They make it seem like she's gone on hard times because she had to find out with her family and she's just been trying to like survive in New York. So I think it's based on need. I think that's the explanation of her background.
But I don't think it's given to us as a sympathetic need. Like it's not like she needs to steal this, otherwise she can't eat or will ache or be homeless. Like it always feels like there always seems to be a tinge of she's stealing because she wants to maintain a certain level of lifestyle rather than just maintain a lifestyle. And then, it's a really fun, they go on a trip. They almost get arrested in a field. They have like a funny scene. There's like a lot of really good bits. They show up to McMurray's parents' house, and his mom, played by Bula Bondi, who is also in It's a Wonderful Life, is really wonderful. And there's just
great. Oh my gosh, I remember this movie that was in my top 100. It happens. Make it happen tomorrow. Oh my gosh, what's the name of this movie?
What are you talking about?
It's an old person romance movie from the early 40s that she's in, and I'm blinking on the movie. And I'm going to tell you in approximately 10 seconds.
All right,
Make Way for Tomorrow.
Make Way for Tomorrow. I haven't seen this film.
It's what's also Criterion. You should watch that, and we'll talk about that next episode in mini segments.
I don't think so. The only reason we did this is because this is the other Christmas film related to Barbara Stanwyck. But yeah, it's just a really fun film. I think the first time I watched both of them, I liked Remember the Night more than Christmas in Connecticut, and on rewatch, I think I switched back slightly. They are very close together, and while both enjoyable for Christmas, have a different vibe going on. But yeah,
Christmas Connecticut is a pure comedy, and it just works for.
It's much lighter. It's much lighter.
Yeah.
Remember the Night is sexy as fuck, and Stanwyck is a absolute knockout in this film. Like she looks amazing in this. It's one of the most you're like, wow, I completely understand why the studio would let her do whatever role she wants for years. Because she there's something about her on screen that is different from other people. And I think Remember the Night is a really good example of that.
One last comment I want to make before we move on is just how different this movie would be if it was made in the modern studio system, that they would feel the need to add so much more drama, so much more hyped up stakes to it. But when she, goes to his house, Fred McMurray's family's house, and even when his mom finds out she's a criminal, everything's still kind of chill about it. She's still so respectful. It's not this big secret that you have to deal with that I think in a modern movie would be hanging over. It's what happens when we reveal the secrets and all the anger and the drama that comes out from this. But there's still such a respectability between all the characters, such a real humanity that they can share, rather than there's a lack of judgment that all the characters have for each other. That I think we just don't have the patience to show in modern movies, that were more about how do we, create drama. So I found that very delightful. So when I talk about this movie being warm, I think a lot of it comes from that.
You're right. The point I think you made, the best way to describe it, is it's very chill. It has moments of real passion, of characters really falling to each other. It has moments where big reveals occur. You realize that how terrible Stanwyck's parents were. You have moments where McMurray's family has to realize why Stanwyck is there with him and doesn't have options. And even there's a lot of scenes in this film that could be really ratcheted up to be explosive, powerful, big scenes. And the restraint is really kind of part of why it works. It's just they kind of just let the story happen. even the way that they don't moralize about what Stanwyck did. Like you're introduced to her as a thief through a court case where you have a kind of goofy lawyer on the side make a mistake and potentially connect it to a mental illness, and then McMurray's seen as he's like the hero, but he's also a bit of a dick because he pulls this move so she gets locked up over Christmas, and then he regrets it, sort of regrets it, and then bails her out. And then they go together, and it's just like the way that the movie really lets it just unfold in front of you without judgment is, I think, a real credit to the director and the screenwriter. Like the way that they composed it was just quite impressive.
Yeah.
Let's move on. We talked our mini segment, and let's talk about the main event. We've got Christmas in Connecticut, which is a really fun, wonderful Christmas movie that everyone should watch every Christmas because it's not as good as It's a Wonderful Life, but it certainly deserves to be a companion piece to the rest.
It's
of
also
Christmas
working on a different mood. So
100%.
A lighter, fun fare. It's not the emotional beats that It's a Wonderful Life has, but if you just want a nice, pleasant, it's like a great Christmas Eve movie.
Well, I mean, in my world, we watch It's a Wonderful Life on Christmas Eve because that is the you got to do that. But yeah,
CBC, my friend, Charlie Brown Christmas. That's Christmas Eve to me.
Yeah, well, that's like 20 minutes long, so that's not like I don't think that's not a full movie.
No, I watch it on repeat. I TNT it, just play it all day or TBS.
That sounds. I'm not gonna lie. I like the film. That sounds awful. Why don't you give us
you key in, you get a very earnest speech by Linus.
Why don't you give us a plot summary of Christmas in Connecticut so our audience can understand what we're talking about here?
So figure this: Barbara Stanwyck, she's involved in a little bit of a scheme, like every other movie we watch. Her scheme this is she's a very famous like homemaking journalist to write about, what it's like to make a home in this farm out in Connecticut and, cook nice meals and celebrate things. And to where a kind of military hero that survived on a raft, he life of pilot without the animals for a number of days, to where he kind of fell in love with their article, and that his like Make-A-Wish army version was to have that meal as his like first meal when he can eat solids again. And it turns out she was all a fraud. This was all made up. She's the average New Yorker Barbara Stanwyck character. She doesn't know how to cook. She was just writing fiction with some help from her uncle, played by Asty Sackle, the best actor that has ever lived. And so they kind of go, her and her kind of suitor that constantly asks her to get married, but she like maintains friends, but like he's a little bit of a goober for her to want to marry. She kind of agrees to marry him, but then they go to it. They form a plot when they find out he has a farm to make this all happen seem real, especially after finding out that the owner of the newspaper wants to join. So she wants to keep her job, so they have to make this seem real. So shenanigans happen. They have a lot of people in this house in Connecticut and trying to make it seem real while also like trying to form a marriage ceremony to make the marriage seem official while trying to act like you have a baby, and then babies keep switching. And then her just being completely clueless about anything going on this farm. So there's a lot of great bits and shenanigans they do with how everyone else seems so much more comfortable on the farm than she is. It's supposed to be hers. And it's just a delightful Christmas movie. So.
Yeah, I mean, it really does feel like a smaller scale version of Meet John Doe, mixed with sort of a Cary Grant slapstick movie. Like, she basically creates this character, this author, who lives on a farm and has this baby and this husband and does all this cooking and stuff. And she lives in an apartment with no husband and no baby and no farm. And it's sort of like the Meet John Doe situation, except in this one, it's played for laughs rather than something more serious.
Yeah.
Because in this one, the problem occurs when she gets called on it by Sidney Greenstreet, the editor of the paper, who's like, "We're going to all come down there and have Christmas dinner on your farm." Which, by the way, if your boss is ever like, "Can I have Christmas dinner on your farm?" That's weird. Leave us alone.
it seems like he just like really likes good food and wants to eat a lot, and he kind of wants to avoid his family on Christmas.
Well, his family all wants him to eat like healthy and like not.
That's right. Yes.
And he literally makes a comment which is hilarious, which is like in the film, he's like, the healthy food and dieting is killing him. And the reason they made him diet was like he's way too overweight and has like health problems. I also think that the setup to this movie is hilarious. Like the opening scene to this movie is like two random soldiers on a raft that you have absolutely no connection to. Like, it's a very funny opening because it's completely irrelevant. It's basically, you do not need to have it in the film. It's basically irrelevant to the rest of the film. You could just have a scene in a hospital of two guys. Like the fact that they were on a raft or that they got shot down or whatever is completely irrelevant to the rest of the film. It's a very funny opening because it makes you think that it's a completely different movie than what the movie ends up being. I mean, it's a good scene. It's just a funny one. That's
There's some purpose to it as far as building an understanding of why he would put so much importance in his first meal, because it's like just shows him starving and imagining this beautiful gourmet meal being given to him on this raft. So it sets like, why does he care so much about being able to eat with her? So they make it, seem tangible to us. But it does propose him as like the main character, so you get a little bit more of spin when like 5 minutes later it cuts to Barbara Stanwyck, who's the real one that we're following and kind of rooting for to pull off this weird bit. Is that after Robert Morgan? Dennis Morgan. So Dennis Morgan, not someone I'm too familiar with, but like he's just like a perfect charming romantic lead for him. Like he's not as important as some of the romantic leads in the other romantic comedies we've talked about in this unit, but I think he's not the dope. He is kind of the honorable man that can hold his own intelligence, and he doesn't have much class. He's a straight man, but he's just like perfectly charming for what this movie needs, and makes the quick romance believable for that. I mean, he looks like stunning as he like enters in his military suit, so you can see how she like immediately falls for him instead of the goober, suit she had.
He's very much a studio player leading man in that he does not have an actual personality or particular traits that makes you recognize him. He's one of those actors that you see him in a film and you instantly think you've seen him in a bunch of movies, and then you realize, oh, I haven't. I've just seen a bunch of other Dennis Morgans in other movies. Like he's that guy. Like there are 100 versions of that actor, and like
he's like the guy next door. Like the male.
Yeah, he's the guy next door.
Like seems like someone that can exist in your suburban neighborhood that you all look up to, and seems like a nice, good old boy in that case. And now that's what he serves the purpose in this movie, just to be a handsome, good old boy.
He has his look. He probably was in 100 movies. He probably played the love interest in every single one of them. This is, I think, his most famous movie. And he probably is just the person who got hired by, like, the studio identified him when he was younger and was like, okay, you're a handsome dude. We're going to give you basic acting lessons and you're going to play the leading man in 100 movies and that'll be your career. And like, he's the one character in the main cast that is, he's not replaceable, but you could do that performance with 100 other actors in a way that you can't replace what Greenstreet or Stanwick or Zalika, I believe his name is doing. Sackall is doing.
S.C. Sackall, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. In like Reginald Gardner, who's the bro, gets to play up much more of a character, much more of this like earnest, try hard. So to give a little bit of contrast to why you might like him over Reginald Gardner. Now I want to play a quick game. This should be a game anytime we play or do a classic movie, but the answer is always going to be the same. What do you think Dennis Morgan's last credit was? Which is pretty much the last credit of every like B-list classic movie actor, and it happens in 1980.
1980.
I don't know how much you look at classic movie actors, but like everyone has this on their credits.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about.
It's the death of everyone's career.
It's one of those. I'm not going to know this if I'm not going to.
It's The Love Boat.
Oh, of course it is.
Everyone took a trip on Love Boat once they didn't have a movie for the past 20 years.
Yeah, that makes sense right there.
Yeah. So, since I brought up Reginald Gardner, who plays John Sloan, who's the bro of Barbara Stanwyck, this like try-hard architect.
I mean,
that
Bo
I
is,
think largely
Bo is
what
stretching it. Bo is stretching.
Suitor is the word I used before. Now it's better. He's
he
someone trying to court her, but primarily what it seems like more as like a trophy wife. It's more as like for stature, because that seems like his number one priority is how does he become like known as this top tier architect, which cares much more than love. And she's always very open with him, like saying I don't love you, and he's just like, oh, like you can learn how to love me, and it's never really true whether he loves her or not too. So because he doesn't really come off as a horrible person, which I think is why this character works. I think that's very specific because he's not a villain and he is like helping her out, and he just like his priorities are a little mixed up, and they say he's a tryhard, so he's just like obnoxious, but he doesn't do anything villainous, especially at least in the 1940s. Say mine like today, how hard he pushes to be a wife could be seen as horrible, and he still has like a level of charm, and that you can see how he can pull off this bit with her and come off as a husband. So I think he has like the tightest rope to walk of any character, because it's really easy to make this character seem villainous. But to make him someone that we enjoy watching and can still believe them to be like friends at the end, and still believe everything ends up warm, even though she ends up married the other guy. I think he's low key might be the second best performance after Stanwick in this movie.
Interesting. I think he, in the context of now, really codes as gay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And like Stanwick is the beard, to protect his reputation as an architect, because in the context of this time period, being the gay architect, while not unsurprising, would have been probably a detriment to his career, because it really does seem like he seems to think that there's like, I struggle to see even like an attraction that is portrayed on screen. He doesn't even seem particularly into her. Like, he wants her to marry him.
It's status.
It really does feel like he's decided that he wants her to marry him and that she and him should be together. But not in the context of like, I love this person, I can't imagine not being without them. More in the context of just like, she checks boxes. Like, it seems like a very calculating move. And that's why, as the audience, when Stanwick makes the last minute turn at the end of the film to Dennis Morgan, you're like, yeah, this makes sense. They want to fuck. They're the super hot couple with the chemistry. And Reginald Gardner's a little bit more of the guy who's like, she checks boxes on my checklist. And Dennis Morgan's like, let's jump in the head.
It prevents it from making it feel like a betrayal, too. Like, he was led through dishonesty and other things, because it's like he was never fully invested anyways. It was always just mutually beneficial for both of them at that point, because she was scared of losing her job, and he was someone safe to marry.
Right. He's the conduit to the farmhouse that they needed to keep up the ruse. And he was helpful in acquiring the baby and acquiring a lot of the stuff that allowed them to pretend that she was actually the writer persona that she had created.
Just to keep going off things that get mentioned side by the baby, the best bit. I want to know what your best bit. The baby bit going throughout is really funny, and at one point very monstrous, and I'll talk about that in a second. But the like her complete lack of comfort with the baby at the first time we see it, which is the baby comes from these kind of local women who work at a factory who just drop off their baby at this house to be watched for the day. She's like, oh, we have a baby that we can go as our own, but she like has never seen this baby before it's like out and with her and Dennis Morgan, and so she like misgenders it until he like calls off, and this is like where her acting I think is the best, the way she's able to pull off how like all it was just like not a mistake, and just to make it seem like he just misheard her. There's like some pretty ingenious comic acting. But also when Dennis Morgan comes in, he's just like such just like hyper confident person, that the relief that Barbara Stanwyck feels, which is like more or less throws the baby into his arms, like, oh, you can wash him then since you seem so comfortable. Like she doesn't have to fight for this anymore. Lovely bit.
Part of the bit is also that continues that is that there are two different babies from two different women who are working in a factory during war times. So at one point, the baby ages about a year and a half potentially and starts talking and is a different hair color and changes gender. And
they make it work and make it believable for everybody there.
And then at one one of the women comes and takes her baby back because obviously she would like her baby back, and Sidney Greenstreet believes that somebody has stolen his newspaper's baby, which is again like I've been just watching Sidney Greenstreet like, that's our newspaper's baby. Like the actual concern for the baby is very low. The concern for the idea that the baby, as it relates to the newspaper being stolen, is very high. I think the best bit of the film is anything related to Sidney Greenstreet and food. He randomly gets really obsessed with it. He gets really particular about certain things. Like he really wants to watch people flip pancakes in front of him. It's not enough to just be served pancakes. He needs to watch them flip them in front of him. That's very important. He's literally bribed at one point into rehiring Barbara Stanwyck in exchange for some cooked kidneys, which feels like one of the worst trades in the history of humanity. Why on earth would you pay somebody's salary so you could eat kidneys? Like, are kidneys good? Please, if you have an experience with kidneys, I've never eaten kidneys. If you have experience, please email us. Drop them down in the comment section. I would love to know if kidneys are actually worth eating.
Mail us kidneys, and we'll eat it live on air.
No, don't mail us kidneys. We do not mail us kidneys.
Live human kidneys.
That does not. I'm sorry.
We'll eat it on our Science of the Lambs episode.
Director Ray, I'm really sorry. In case you're now listening to this, Zach did not mean for anyone to send us actual kidneys. We were talking about cooked kidneys from animals that you buy in a grocery store or potentially at a bookstore.
Cooked kidneys from the human animals that you buy in the black market, yes.
This is really going to become a problem when you get arrested if you're on the podcast has to get a new co-host. There are several really good bits about the film. I mean, there's some really funny bits. The farming, anything to do with farming is also a bit. Basically, all the bits relate to Stanwyck's inexperience with the personality she's created. So the personality is a mom. Stanwyck has no idea what to do with the kid. The personality is a great cook. Stanwyck has no idea what to do in the kitchen. Like there are literally scenes in the film where like we'll have her flip a pancake and she literally shuts her eyes and just does it and like just kind of hopes that it happens. And then the final bit is anything to do with farm animals. She's supposed to live on a farm, but is clearly a city girl who has no idea, lets animals walks off, does silly, like just is like acts like generally like somebody who has no idea what farm animals are doing. And all those bits are really good.
Yeah. And just to add to the Sidney Greenstreet's fruit obsession, just how like that's the easiest way to like calm him down into his heart, because in like the prime of him feeling lied to and worried about his paper and his primary journalist, being a fraud, he just immediately walks in and as he's cooking, and he's like has no problem with anybody. Like, you're cooking food. Is this for me? And then Essie Zackel, who's a real badass in this film. He's the smartest person in the movie.
I love Essie Zackel.
He is the one that like. One is judging everyone around him and all the chaos happening, but he's also the one who solves everything. He literally ties up the ties of all the relationships and all the miscommunications of all Barbara Stanwyck, just like a really go-to uncle. He makes everything clean for her, kind of pretty low key, to where he's just the one who knows what's going on. So when he comes in to like, are you cooking kidneys? He's like, no, you mess with my girl, Barbara Stanwyck, you get nothing. He's just like very loyal to her. And this movie, I don't think would work without him because he is like low key the centerpiece of this movie that like makes everything function around him.
Well, he's the reason that you don't at any point get mad at Stanwyck for creating a false narrative of a woman who lives on a farm and is great at cooking. Because you learned really early on that she bankrolled his entire restaurant. She bankrolled this wonderful Eastern European man's restaurant where he cooks wonderful food. And there's so many. He's just a wonderful presence. He's so petty in different moments. Like he literally, like at the end of the film, he gets Stanwyck her job back by literally saying, "You give her job back, or you get no kidneys." Like there's a scene at the restaurant where he really doesn't like Reginald Gardner, so he kept throwing food on the guy's plate that he's not going to like. Like there's a scene where he's getting plates, he's putting stuff on plates for both Stanwyck and Gardner, and all the stuff he puts on Stanwyck's plate is clearly the stuff he's proud of and that she thinks she'll like, and he keeps putting like weird pickled things on Gardner's plate in an attempt to like make him sick, and he's always crapping on him. He has so many funny lines. he gets asked
And
one
his
time.
pronunciations, which is kind of his bit as an actor at the time, because with his accent, but like
It's so good,
that's
though.
my name is catastrophe, because the whole time that's like his catchphrase throughout the movie, because he learns what the word catastrophe is, but never learned to say it properly.
Which is also a great bit because he just asks some random server at his restaurant, and the server literally just word for word states the dictionary definition of catastrophe in a wonderful bit. It's so great. Well, it's also really funny because it's actually a really smart, and I don't typically like the sort of minstrelly African American servant characters. Those are always kind of a rough look on rewatch. That moment makes that character worth it for me is the fact that they have this character and he's doing the typical, even the intonation, the sing-songy things, and then in that moment stops and delivers like the English dictionary definition of catastrophe is a really funny bit and also completely out of character for what that character's been set up to be, and is like the one redeeming thing about any kind of character like that, where you're just like, on rewatch, you're like, can we just have them let them talk like normal people?
Well, that one, I think he does. He talks very intelligently the whole movie. So I don't know you see, but there is some confusion because the dark side of that is Remember the Night. Remember the Night has the kind of servant character that talks in that very broken up English that they
the stuttering thing,
yeah. But no, this is they treat their minority characters, even though they're all like the smallest little like side players. They have like one line, but they're I think treated with much more respect than a lot of characters or a lot of actors of color did at that time with their roles. So this guy comes off as like super intelligent and they maybe memorize the dictionary. There's more dignity to his role than often black actors were given. Even though it's a two-line role.
I will say one of my favorite quotes from Felix, the Zack character, is the fact that he continually refers to things as hunky dunky.
Yeah.
Everything is hunky dunky.
And there's we talked about how he is so reluctant about this marriage to John Sloan, that he's this reluctant witness to their wedding that they keep trying to have an aside with this like local judge that they keep bringing in and throwing in and out of windows. But the one point, the way he gets to postpone the wedding is he gets everyone to believe that the baby swallowed this giant ass watch. This like lock and pocket watch. Like, why did anybody go for this? That baby is dead. That baby swallowed this like 5-pound watch. That's a great bit too.
he firmly sticks to the rule that snitches get stitches. He refuses to give anybody away. He always keeps his mouth shut, which is a funny line in response to the judge asking if he'd give the bride away, and him interpreting that as a statement about giving up information. He's just like he's just this lovely, charming presence. He has a really funny joke when they realize that they have a boy baby instead of a girl baby, and he says, "It's life. Sometimes you get girls, sometimes boys." Which is just like, he's just like kind of the wonderful character. He's simultaneously kind of grumpy. He gets into fights with the housekeeper.
He has real chef energy. He has that control of the kitchen, that bossiness and particularness.
He's Napoleon.
How things should be. So when he comes in and meets Una Connor, who plays Nora, who's the like housekeeper for the farm, and they both are like have this competing controllers of the house energy. They definitely fuck right at the end of this movie. Those two love each other.
No.
It's one of those. No, it's one of those. They're so combatant. They get married too.
He's the Napoleon of the kitchen. He is a man who is not particularly impressive in terms of the way he carries himself or even stature or look, but he rules it with an iron fist, and what he says goes.
But so does Nora. No one's going to tell Nora what to do. You don't fucking tell Nora to flip a pancake. I've never flipped a pancake, and I will not flip a pancake for you. She has the same exact like combatant energy. That's why I think that they had a lot of it off in
the difference between him and Nora. The difference between him and Nora is Nora doesn't really care what everybody else is doing, and he is like outwardly judging all choices of all other characters at all time. He judges Stanwick's like buying a fur coat. He judges Stanwick's like potentially marrying Gardner. He judges Stanwick for all these different things, but in like a kind of wonderful, like loving uncle persona. Like he's clearly very protective of her, but also simultaneously thinks she constantly makes terrible decisions and is not afraid to share his opinion about anything at any time.
Yeah, Nora only cares about things that like affect her Protestant specific way of life. She only cares that they're not like fucking in a bedroom without being married.
I mean, I feel like I got to call you out now. You just said Protestant. She's quite clearly, she's Catholic. She's clearly Catholic. She's an Irish, housekeeper in that era. That's clearly a Catholic.
There is a lot of Protestants in Ireland, and that was a lot of what the NRA was fighting against. So it could go both ways.
I'm pretty sure the Protestants were the people that they didn't like.
The Brits,
to the Irish people, the Protestants.
But there were still plenty of Irish Protestants that were part of this. That was the division.
She's probably Catholic.
She's probably Catholic. I'm just saying this like American Protestant kind of point of view of
puritanical.
Puritanical. That's a better word. Thank you.
Yeah. Let's see. So let's talk about I'm gonna blank on her name because she's weirdly important for like a very small percent. Mary Lee, the character of the nurse from the original hospital where Dennis Morgan character originally ends up. There is this movie has like some very weird components to it. And one of the weirdest is the idea that if you're in the hospital after being starved for a long period of time, that the way to go from eating egg in milk is to tell one of the nurses you want to marry them, and that will make the nurses give you better food.
It's like how far did you go? I had to go all the way, asking to marry her, which is a real like sex joke that they have to explain with just like asking to marry. But
if you made that joke basically like 1970s onward, people would be like, okay, you're clearly just talking about sex. But in the 1940s, you can sort of get with the idea with the way that you have to promise her not just to be like her boyfriend, like but also her husband. Yeah, you have to basically promise her like a ring in marriage. It's also just like, are these nurses just sitting around being like, I'm just waiting for the next guy who wants a nice steak to tell me that he wants to marry me.
They make it seem like that's why they became nurses, was to like find an army man to marry.
I mean, to be fair, there's probably a better argument for this in the 1940s where nursing was not necessarily like a profession that you had to get a specific degree for. Quite a potential possibility that the nurses in this hospital.
There's a volunteer bit, right?
Like, right. There was probably the very likely chance these people were just like high school graduates who were just like, yes, I'll just be a nurse because we're all pitching in for the war effort. But it is a pretty funny moment because it's just like the idea that you can get a better meal by telling a nurse that you want to marry them, and then this becomes like the whole tension of the entire piece. Is that Dennis Morgan believes Barbara Stanwyck is married the entire time, even though they haven't actually gotten married to Gardner because they can't get the moment with the Justice of the Peace, who is an actor from It's a Wonderful Life. He's one of the people, I think, who does the Run on the Bank. He's one of these just classic character actors you've seen and stuff. And then he's also just like the idea like that becomes a big conflict because Morgan thinks Stanwyck is married the entire time. It doesn't relate to the end. And Morgan believes that he is engaged to be married to this woman until she randomly shows up at the end of the movie and says that she married his shipmate, the other guy that was on the raft with him, basically without telling him and out of nowhere. It's the one thing about the film where you're just like, it's very clearly in like the 1940s screwball comedy style, a choice that was made 100% to just tie up loose ends. Like her marrying this character doesn't make any sense. There's barely seems an indication that they've spoken, but they get married. So then Dennis Morgan is completely free to, get married to Barbara Stanwyck at the end of the film. And we can all be like, yay, happiness. And Sidney Greenstreet gets his kidneys and, the good stuff happens.
Breaking news. This may be wrong. So the actor that plays the judge, his name is Dick Elliott. His credit in It's a Wonderful Life is Man on Porch. Is this the guy that says this kisser?
He is the kisser. One of my all-time favorite characters. Mr. Smoochie, one of my all-time favorite characters. I love this character.
He's now one of the patron saints of the podcast. Him and Tom Hanks.
We have to do Dick Elliott month.
He was in Missy Smith Goes Washington. I had an actual thought to say, and now I got all
no,
caught up in that.
he's a Capra guy.
Yeah. Okay. So go back to this fake marriage between or not fake marriage, but this engagement between the nurse and Dennis Morgan is that this is one of the like honestly super funny kind of character plot moments that they don't play up at all, so you don't realize how funny it is until you think about it, is that even though he literally just agreed to be engaged to her so he can get a feast out of this, he also was like very loyal to it. He's like still like gonna follow through with this promise that he just did for a meal. He was gonna marry, he's gonna be 40 years in a marriage. That was all because he was really hungry off this raft. Have 3 kids. How'd you meet your mom? I was like, I just really want the steak. I just really needed a steak.
But I think that plays into the fact that we are 100% supposed to believe that he is just like, he is the ultimate good guy. He is the war hero. He is the guy who gave the guy on the raft with him the last ration. He gave the other guy the last rations, and he didn't take any. And he makes this silly promise to this girl that he could so easily get out of. And clearly, because of the way his friend talks about it, we're given some indication that this is kind of a bullshit scheme that a lot of guys pull. So for him to do it would not be that ridiculous because it's just very much something that everyone was doing at that moment. But he is so loyal to the point where he won't kiss Barbara Stanwyck because she's a married woman up until the end of the film, where he decides he's going to kiss the married woman to ultimately realize that Barbara Stanwyck isn't married all along.
Yeah.
It's just a really, really, really fun film.
And I think it works like for all 90 minutes. Like there's no like lulls. It moves really quickly. The laughs constantly come. They find new bits to play off of this kind of confusion-based plot, which sometimes can go tired and go exhausting. But I think they just have so much ideas to work with on this farm.
Well, they also just do the really smart thing of realizing that they never try to make this something it's not. They tell you it's kind of a screwball comedy Christmas movie. It has some nice Christmas moments. You kind of feel good about the holiday season. They have some fun adventures. There's some fun food. There's some hijinks, but it also just like it keeps it moving, and it never tries to like delve deep into the dramatic stuff, because what would make this movie slow down is if you ever tried to really like get like really dramatic sequences about why Dennis Morgan isn't going to marry the nurse or why Stanwick isn't going to marry Reginald. And it's like, it's a situation where like, you know that you could do that. You could have a big sequence about why these people aren't getting married, but then that scene would just be a real drag and no one really wants to watch that.
Yeah. We didn't really talk about Barbara Stanwyck that much.
Yeah,
she is once again the best performance, I would think. She makes the movie work. I think what's different about this and some of her other comedic roles is this is the first time you really see her in over her head. Like, she still seems like one of the smartest people in the room, which is what she always carries, that kind of grace, that street smartness. But this is where she is kind of like floundering in the scenario that she put herself in and just trying to constantly solve her way out of it and, lie and improv her way out of these bits that, she has that quick wit that can make it seem like she can get out of these moments, but just kind of, she keeps getting buried because all of a sudden there's like a different gender baby and all of a sudden there's a cow at the window and, she has this marriage going. So it's really, really good to see her flustered, which I found very delightful, especially when she's still able to maintain everything we think about Stanwick throughout that.
Yeah, it's a very much like a classic screwball comedy performance where, you would see a lot of from Cary Grant, where you would get someone who's clearly incredibly charming, incredibly likable, funny, interesting. Everybody just loves them the instant they walk into the sequence. And then you put them in a scenario where you're asking them to constantly be quick on their toes, jump in and out of hoops, it's a constant scenario of you think you fix the first problem to create the second problem, and then watching how these people, quick talk their way out of that is just enjoyable. And when you have somebody who is as charming as Stanwyck, that just works so well as a concept, because you're rooting for her. So the fact that she's able to talk herself out of 19 ridiculous scenarios and convince people that they misheard her when she, misgenders the baby or screws up like basic stuff about cows. Like, you understand in the film why all the characters are so charmed by her that they would ignore the obvious signs that something is happening. Like, if Steinwick was less charming, you'd be like, are Dennis Morgan and Sidney Greenstreet idiots who are just like totally ignoring the fact that she clearly has no idea what she's doing in the kitchen and no idea with babies and no idea with farm animals, but she's just so charming that she's able to basically, twirl everyone around her little finger and, convince everyone that, oh, she made a small mistake, but she fixed it. And so no one, it takes like really, really long time in the film. And this is like the classic screwball comedy thing for anyone to even realize that there's something that could potentially be going on. Like, she's able to dig herself out of the hole so many times over.
Yeah. Just terrific. She's the best.
She's really fantastic. And this is like so much fun to do this month about her. Zach, why don't you give us your final thoughts on Christmas in Connecticut and on a larger basis, Barbara Stanwyck. This has been fun. This was your idea.
Yeah. I mean, Christmas Connecticut, this is the fourth time I've seen it. It's because it is just like a highly watchable, even, outside of Christmas, because the Christmas is just the setting. And there's like a line Sidney Greenstreet, throws at the end when he's just like, what a Christmas. But otherwise, it just functions as this wonderful screwball comedy you can watch at any time. But does have just that delightful spirit that I think ages really well. That this, my wife does not like classic films, but this is one I don't feel bad about throwing on for, because I feel like it's an energy that could be relevant to today. But I think, the funniest of movies only get better with time, because the lightness becomes something that you start to really yearn for, rather than something that you can. Sometimes you can treat lightness of a film as a hit, like this doesn't have anything deeper to say. But the more you watch it, it becomes something so comforting, such as warm blanket, that those films can really grow. This has a special energy, and I think that's true of a lot of Barbara Stanwyck movies, because she has that delightful energy through, Lady Eve and Ball of Fire. That even though she kind of has a higher key of an energy, it has a warm blanket appeal to me. Also, with just someone, we said, with just such glamour, just someone who always knows how to look great on screen, which is something that is very specific about classic Hollywood. And I think she did better than most of the time, just how she can look great in black and white. And I think someone that, especially at that time, didn't have the specific classic beauty of what many of the starlets had. She had a very, specific look to her that she just knew how to carry around. And a lot of that we say sounds like physical looks, but I think a lot of it comes from just her aura and her personality that adds to how she appears. So.
Yeah. So you were the one who suggested doing this, and I'd experienced Stanwyck, but I think at the time when we started this, before doing it, I didn't really understand kind of how impactful she is and how underrated she is. Stanwyck obviously has some movies that are held up with the greatest of all time, but if you really look at her entire filmography, we covered 5 movies that are all really good. Even the least of them, Meet John Doe, is worth watching. And basically one of her movies is considered an all-time, maybe 2. She does not given the same place in history as some other stars of the same generation, which is completely unfair. She is absolutely amazing. And I think maybe it's because she consistently plays characters that are kind of morally ambivalent to bad. Maybe it's because she doesn't always play heroines that it makes that are apart. She's a star. She's an absolute star. Every second she's on screen, she has that thing that just it factor that you see from any of the people that we hold up as classic stars of Hollywood. She's absolutely unforgettable. Any movie you watch with Barbara Stanwyck, you will remember Barbara Stanwyck. You'll genuinely be surprised if anyone else in the film is better than her or even close to as good as her. She consistently blows people off the screen. Christmas in Connecticut is just a wonderful Christmas movie. All the other films we've covered are wonderful for a variety of different ways. She has range. She can do kind of the charming screwball comedy. She can play darker and more dangerous. She's really good at using her looks and her personality and her charm to either make herself very, very likable and kind of the life of the party, or also can be used to really play like an ultimate seductress who's just warping people to her and making them do her bidding. She's just impressive. She's really impressive in everything we've seen her do. I'm really glad we did this month. I think it was a really good dive deep. It certainly leaves you with wanting more. You want to watch more Stanwyck. She's one of those people that, there's a small list of actors when you watch like 5 movies of theirs in a row that you want more of them. Like a lot of times if you watch 5 movies in a row from a single actor, you're like, okay, I would like something else now. I would like something else different. Stanwyck falls on the list with people like, I don't know, Cary Grant's another one for me that's just like, I want to watch more. I don't ever feel bored with them. I just find them to be such engaging, enjoyable screen presences. In some ways, she is very much the female counterpart to Cary Grant, and it's interesting. It would have been fascinating, one, to just see a movie with the two of them together. I wonder what that would have looked like. Just the absolute explosion that would have occurred if the two of them had just trying to go on it on set. I don't know who would have won. I don't know who would have blown the other off screen. I don't know if it would have been close, but it would have been interesting. Yeah, she's definitely one I want to watch more from. This was an absolutely wonderful month, so I'm really glad that you pushed so hard for it.
Yeah, if there's any testament to what you're saying of how rewatchable these movies are, but also how just generally watchable she is, that we want to keep going to. This is the only marathon we have done, the only theme we have done where we both voluntarily did watch an extra movie with Remember the Night, just because we had the urge for more. So this is probably one of the easiest to watch group of films we've had throughout all our shows. So
yeah, she does a lot of like short and sweet films, and they're also like exceptional. We've had other marathons that have been as short, but none of them have hit the heights in terms of quality. With that being said, let's announce next month's topic. We're coming back in June, and we are covering movie adaptations of Broadway musicals, specifically focusing on the non-classical Hollywood musical. So one movie in the 70s, but then majority from then onward. And the purpose of this was we really wanted to be able to talk about some of the weirder choices that musicals make, and they start making more choices between the adaptation from the stage, and they also just start doing weirder stuff. And wanted to dig into that, and we hope you will join us as we start with that. And we will be starting with the first Saturday in June covering Cabaret. That is the one from the pre-1980 that we're covering, but it also, I think, does fit into the sort of non-traditional, non-classical musical trend. Thank you, Zach, for picking a wonderful topic for us.
I got you.
Thank you to the audience for watching. Please keep watching. Keep liking, subscribing, send us emails, look at our letterboxes, look at our YouTube, do all the things, all the information.
Come hang out.
No, don't hang out with me. Zach and me hate people.
Love letters.
Right? Yes, please write Zach love emails.
I don't know, letters. You can put that pen to paper. Put some effort if you want me, baby.
Would you like to put your address out there so that people can send you these love letters?
Is 312 None of Your Business Avenue. I just realized 312 is a real address that I had at one point, but not None of Your Business Avenue.
That is wonderful. All right, folks. We will see you next month when we start covering musical adaptations. Goodbye to Stanwick. Hello to musicals. Zach, you got a song? Let's hit it.
Sure. It's that time of year for Lucas and Zack podcast. Abu doo dee da boo Christmas ba doo dee.